Hello everyone, we're going to be reading chapter 2, part 2. Brian is beginning to fly the plane and trying to transmit his signal over the radio. He let go of the mic. His voice was starting to rattle and he felt as if he might start screaming at any second. He took a deep breath. If there is anyone listening who can help me fly a plane, please answer. Again, he released the mic but heard nothing but the hissing noise of the headset. After half an hour of listening and repeating the cry for help, he tore the headset off in frustration and threw it to the floor. It all seemed so hopeless. Even if he did get somebody, what could anyone do? Tell him to be careful? All so hopeless. He tried to figure out the dials again. He thought he might know which was speed. It was a lighted number that read 160, but he didn't know if that was actually miles an hour or kilometers, or if it was just meant how fast the plane was moving through the air and not over the ground. He knew airspeed was much different than ground speed, and not by much or by how much. Parts of books he'd read about flying came to him, how wings worked, how the propeller pulled the plane through the sky, simple things that wouldn't help him now. Nothing could help him now. An hour passed. He picked up the headset and tried again. It was, he knew, in the end, all he had, but there was no answer. He felt like a prisoner kept in a small cell that was hurling through the sky at what he thought to be 160 miles per hour, headed he didn't know where. There it was. Until what? He could go until he ran out of fuel? When the plane ran out of fuel, it would go down, period. Or he could pull the throttle out and make it down slowly. He had seen the pilot push through the throttle to increase speed. If he pulled the throttle back out, the engine would then slow down and the plane would go down. Those were his choices. He could wait for the plane to run out of gas or fall, or he could push in the throttle and make it happen sooner. If he waited for the plane to run out of fuel, he would go farther, but he did not know which way he was moving. When the pilot had moved, he had twisted the plane, but Brian could not remember how much or if it had come back to its original course. Since he did not know the original course anyway and could only guess at what the display might say, 342, he did not know where he was going anyway, so what difference was it? Everything in him rebelled against stopping the engine and falling now. He had a vague feeling that he was wrong to keep heading as the plane was heading, a feeling that he might be going off course in the wrong direction. Now he was safe, or safer if he went down. The plane was flying, he was still breathing. When the engine stopped, it would go down. So he left the plane running, holding altitude and trying to keep the radio. He worked out a system. Every 10 minutes by the small clock built in the dashboard, he tried the radio with a simple message. I need help. Is there anyone listening to me? In the times between transmissions, he tried to prepare himself for what he knew was coming. When he ran out of fuel, the plane would start to go down. He guessed that without the propeller pulling, he would have to push the nose down to keep the plane flying. He thought he may have read that somewhere, or it just came to him. Either way, it made sense. He would have to push the nose down to keep flying speed, and then, just before he hit, he would have to pull the nose back up to slow the plane down as much as possible. It all made sense. Glide down, the slow plane down, and hit. He would have to find a clearing as he went down. The problem with that was he hadn't seen a clearing since they started flying over the forest. Some swamps, but then there were trees scattered through them. No roads, no trails, no clearing. Just the lakes, and it came to him that he would have to use a lake for landing. If he went down in the trees, he was certain to die. The trees would tear the plane to pieces. He would have to come down in a lake. No, on the edge of a lake. He would have to come down near the edge of a lake and try to slow the plane as much as possible before it hit the water. Easy to say, he thought. Hard to do. Easy to say, hard to do. Easy to say, hard to do. It became a chant that beat with the engine. Easy to say, hard to do, impossible to do. He repeated the radio call 17 times at the 10-minute intervals, working on what he would do between transmissions. Once more, he reached over to the pilot and touched him on the face. His skin was cold, hard and cold, and Brian knew what had happened. He did what he could, tightened his seatbelt, positioned himself, rehearsed again and again what his procedure should be. When the plane ran out of gas, he hold the nose and head for the nearest lake and tried to fly the plane into the water or beside the water. That's what he thought of, kind of fly the plane onto the water. And just before it hit, he should pull back on the wheel and slow the plane down to reduce the impact. Over and over in his mind, he ran through the picture of how it would go. The plane running out of gas, flying, the plane into the water, the crash from pictures he'd seen on television. He tried to visualize it in his mind and tried to be ready. But between the 17th and 18th radio transmissions, without warning, the engine coughed, roared violently for a second, and died. There was sudden silence, cut only by the sound of the windmilling propeller and the wind past the cockpit. Brian pushed the nose of the plane down and threw up. And that is the end of chapter 2. Thank you for listening.